Hello, we are Eric,
Mason.
And Sonia.
and today we will be talking about the evolution of feminine and Indian representation in video games. Let's start with the history of the issue. Before the mid 80s, little to none female characters were represented in video games. One of the most famous female character of all time is Samus from Metroid in 1986. However, in Metroid's case, it wasn't a big step for femininity because Samus's reveal was treated as a reward for players that beat the game. The reward was Samus being shown as a bikini beauty at the end scene. Sexualization and objectification of women will continue to happen as the years go on. For example, in Grand Theft Auto, players have the option to go to a strip club and pay for a lap dance. After enough money is given to the dancer might choose to accompany the player after the dance, where the dancer would be picked up by the player to have sex.
Get in the car.
I don't like people watching me. Let's find someplace secret.
When on, there are exceptions, such as Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, who had went from sexualized and scantily dressed to fully clothed in the reboot, where she's portrayed as an independent, powerful, and intelligent woman.
The portrayal of colored people in video games is often very stereotyped and racist. On top of that, women of color are stereotyped both for their race and their gender. This trope, common in many video games, is called exotification. In this trope, indigenous people are depicted as strange or alluring, and the women are overly sexualized and seen as being primitive. An example of this trope is present in Hyrule Warriors. In this video game, a sorceress is split into two counterparts, its moral side and its villain side. Unsurprisingly, the villain counterpart, Cia, is dark-skinned and overly sexualized, while the counterpart, Lana, is light-skinned. This practice of associating dark skin with a lack of morals and light skin with righteousness is very common in media, not only in video games. Along with indigenous women, Indian women are heavily underrepresented or overly stereotyped in video games. For example, Symmetra, an Indian female character in Overwatch, is associated with the Hindu goddess of the same name. Hindu religious leaders claim that the representation of Symmetra trivializes Hinduism's highly revered goddess. Symmetra is also the least selected character in the video game. An example of a positive representation of an Indian female character is Chloe Fraser in Uncharted. She is a great example of an independent female video game character who is not sexualized.
Nice and easy.
Take a flight to the diamond.
Asaf says he needs more time to prepare.
The government thinks we're a joke.
They won't think that for much longer.
While this is one positive representation of an Indian female character, there is an overall lack in representation of Indian female characters, and there is still common stereotypes racist towards Indians.
Unfortunately, this lack of representation has largely continued into the modern day. While there are more diverse characterizations of women in video games, largely due to a wider market, women still rarely feature as main characters in video games and are relegated to sidekick or damsel in distress roles quite often. A more recent trend that has been adopted that could be considered a remedy or a continuation of this issue is the option to choose between a male or female protagonist. This option is prominent in games such as Dishonored 2 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. These games in particular embrace the female option and change the story depending on which character you choose, as opposed to simply changing the voice or look of your character, and thus further incentivize the player to try the game from a different perspective. However, most games still have not taken the leap to a singular female protagonist, most likely because they are still aiming for their core audience, which they believe to be males. According to Feminist Frequency, at the E3 Expo in 2015, only 9% of games featured female protagonists, while 32% featured male protagonists and 46% featured both. Furthermore, U.S. researchers examined the top 150 games from March 2005 to February 2006, and 90% of player-controlled characters were male. This is extremely unfortunate because game developers are missing out on a largely untapped market in American females. The fact that most games focus on the male experience so heavily can alienate female audiences. Many believe this is due to a lack of diversity from the top down in game development companies, which are heavily dominated by men. Game companies are made up of as much as 74% men, and there are as many as 2 times as many adult male gamers than adult female gamers. So while female representation in video games has improved greatly, there are still great strides left to be taken. The male developers dominating the industry should start being more representative of all potential gamers, as gaming is not some exclusive club that only certain groups can appreciate. We should all be able to enjoy the uniquely entertaining medium of video games, and that starts by being inclusive of everyone's stories.